Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Pickle Jar. Today, I am returning to my computer versus recording this on my phone. I have been trying to do more of my podcast from my phone and maybe in a more relaxed environment, but I have a lot of notes today on my computer and on my phone, so I can't really use my phone to record and then also use my phone as notes. So I'm going to do this on my computer. I think you'll find this very interesting if you have any level of anxiety. I definitely have anxiety. I take medications for it. Buspirone is what I'm taking right now, and I can tell when I have missed a dose, so I take it twice a day. And when I miss a dose, I start catastrophizing probably at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I start thinking about all the things that I could have done better, or maybe I should have done different, and it's just more distracting, and it keeps me from getting the sleep that I need, and I find it all very helpful. So, obviously our phones are listening devices, and I got an email. I get emails from TED Talks, and so one of the emails was around a neuroscientist talking about how to calm your anxiety. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. I need to know more about this. Like, is this something that would replace my buspirone, or is this something that is in addition to it? And my takeaway is that it's more in addition. This is not really about clinical anxiety. But what she says, this is a neuroscientist, her name is Wendy Suzuki, and she has two activities that you can do around breathing and movement that can soothe your nervous system and fuel more of the creativity. Now, I have done a couple of other podcasts about this, about calming your parasympathetic and getting back to the parasympathetic nervous system. I've also talked extensively about emotional intelligence, and I just posted a podcast probably a couple of weeks ago around paying attention to your feelings versus your emotions. But so I thought it was interesting that everything I had talked about before is now being given from a neuroscientist. Now, this was recorded in March of 2023, so I'm sure that whatever she said is probably filtered through the pipelines of humanity and is probably how it's shown up on my radar. But just so that you know that everything that I've talked about in my previous podcast isn't a fairy tale and it isn't made up, I wanted to talk a little bit about what she says about calming your anxiety. And this can be anything. She talks about, you get an ambiguous email from your boss, and you get nervous, and you have butterflies in your stomach, and you don't know what to do with those feelings, and you start freaking out. Or maybe it's, you get a random call from an ex-boyfriend, or a weird voicemail from an ex-husband or ex-spouse. It can trigger those things. You get a call from your doctor. All of those kinds of things can cause anxiety. And she says that, although most of us see anxiety as a bad thing and to be avoided at all costs, what if it were something that you could work with? And if you took all of that energy that is running around in your brain and transform it into something that you could actually use. So she says, and this is in 2023, obviously we're coming out of the pandemic in 2023, and the global anxiety, both the clinical and the just the kind of the everyday kind of anxiety has just grown over the years, especially with the political climate the way it is in the United States. Both sides of the fence, regardless of your views, are feeling a lot of anxiety. And a lot of us would just rather leave it alone and, throw it away if we could. But it's an important tool, she says, that has come through our evolution and has grown as we've evolved as people. And it's the way we avoid danger. So we really have to have anxiety as part of our ability to survive and grow. But how come we don't feel like it's survival anymore? It feels like we're almost being attacked. Well, that's because the volume of our individual and collective anxiety has been turned up way too high, is what she says. And so sometimes even too much, as they always say, too much of a good thing or survival thing even and that makes it bad. So she shares two powerful science-based tools for maybe turning some of that volume down. And it helps us get our anxiety back to where it's supposed to be as a protective state. And so both of the tools that she talks about, I've also mentioned in previous podcasts, but I think it helps to reiterate these processes, especially as we go into this next year. In the United States, it's an election year. In some other countries, it's also an election year. And then there's just always this heightened state of people are paying more attention. And so it really comes down to connecting with our bodies. Back to what I was saying, pay attention to your feelings, not your emotions. And so the first one that she mentions is breath work, and it's just really deep breathing. And I know I use this quite a bit when I'm feeling upset, anxious. I'm having a big emotion of some kind. And so for those of you that don't quite understand your big emotions and can't quite put a name to it, just know that if you're feeling something big, breathing into it can help. And that doesn't matter if it's joy or sadness. But this slow, deep breathing, the slow inhale and exhale, it can be an immediate way to calm your anxiety, because deep breathing directly activates your natural de-stressing part of your nervous system. And this is called the parasympathetic nervous system. She recommends box breathing, which I have also brought up. I even teach workshops when in public speaking, because there's a lot of anxiety behind public speaking and using box breathing. They also call it Navy SEAL breathing. They also have some other terms for it in Buddhist practice. But it's you inhale on 4 counts, you hold at the top of the inhale for 4 counts, and then exhale deeply on 4 counts. And then hold at the bottom of the exhale for 4 counts. And you can do this anytime you're having an anxiety-provoking conversation, and no one will really know. Even at 3 a.m. when I'm catastrophizing, I will lay in bed and I will do some box breathing to try to get my system back in order and where I think I can maybe go back to sleep. It doesn't always work, but it does help to kind of calm my heart rate and sort of release the tension in my body. So, as I've talked before, there are a lot of ancient monks, Buddhist practitioners, modern meditators. I'm sure there are folks that pray, also maybe use box breathing. And they use this tool all the time as a way to get back in touch with their body. So then tool number 2 is moving your body. So this one has an immediate positive effect for your mood, but for a very different reason, she says. Every time you move your body, you're releasing a whole bunch of beneficial neurochemicals into your brain. And these neurochemicals are things like dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline, and endorphins. And these are mood and reward boosting neurochemicals. And they work to help with positive mood states and decrease the negative ones. And every time you move your body, it's like sort of giving your inside a great bubble bath, is what she calls it, of neurochemicals for your brain. If you've listened to my podcast for very long, you know that I have a past of ultra running and training, and I've run some very long distances, 100-milers. I run Moab 240-mile. I've run Vol State, which is 500 kilometers, which is 314 miles. So I believe in definitely moving my body to work out some things. And I did use ultra running as a form of therapy to help elevate my mood and to sort of get myself reoriented. So then the next time, back to the original her story of if your boss sends you an email or I mention some things, you get a voicemail or message from a doctor or someone in your past that is disruptive. What can you do? Maybe you're in the office. You could take a walk around the block. or you could go to the supply closet to get some sticky notes to just kind of move your body a little bit. I actually, in the office, when I have felt uncomfortable and very anxious, I will get up and walk to the restroom. I will go into the stall, and not only is that moving, but it is also gives me a chance to do some deep breathing in private. And then I will then go to the sink and wash my hands and especially my wrists in cool water, and it all sort of helps get me back in my body, feeling what I'm feeling, taking some deep breaths and calming it down. So one thing she recommends too is that if you're working from home, you can put on a couple of your favorite songs and dance around the living room because no one's going to be watching, and you can move your body as gently or as crazy as you want to. All it takes is about 10 minutes of walking to get the mood boosting effects. But be creative with your movement session. That could be a quick session of power vacuuming. Maybe you just go around and get some things cleaned up. Maybe you're watching a movie and you're stressed about a deadline, and you're doing a set of jumping jacks, and then you get off. Maybe you get off, if you have a high rise that you're working in, you get off one floor earlier and walk up the stairs. So these will all help your anxieties levels come down. And just like if you're walking those stairs or you're doing jumping jacks, that also causes you to do some deep breathing, which can be really super helpful if you're trying to calm all these things down. So she actually did a test with her own students. She teaches at NYU, and she had them take an anxiety assessment before leading them in a movement session that was really about movements from kickboxing and dance and yoga, martial arts, all that, along with some positive verbal affirmations, and then retake the same anxiety assessment. And their anxiety scores decreased and went all the way down to normal levels. And for her, she said that she felt like that was some really powerful real-world example that you can use as well. So if you're going to incorporate these bursts of activities in your day, try out one next time you're feeling stressed. It can actually make your anxiety feel less all-consuming. And once you make this body connection and turn the volume down, there are two important things that will happen. She says, first, when that email comes, you'll be in a better position to evaluate what makes you so anxious about it. Maybe you've taken on too much, or you feel insecure about something that you may or may not have done. You'll be able to use this emotion, anxiety, to see what it was that got you there in the first place. And it was to warn you about a potential danger. So then you can find and become aware of the ways so that you can be more effective and creative in addressing them in your everyday life. So you can get to the root of it and say, why did that email make me feel so anxious? Is it because I think I'm not doing a good job, and maybe you need to talk to your boss about, can you give me some feedback on how I'm doing so that I know whether or not there are areas of improvement? And maybe it's all in your head. Maybe you didn't need to worry about how you're performing. You're doing a great job, and you just needed more validation and feedback. So once you find the warning signals of your anxiety, you'll be able to communicate better with others, whether it's loved ones or, if you're feeling tense or you're feeling withdrawn. You might seek out advice from a colleague. Even if you don't feel comfortable talking to your boss, you can talk to a colleague, especially when these difficult issues arise. And then you might have a conversation then with your boss about maybe how to prioritize your tasks so that you know you're working on the right thing at the right time. You're no longer in a fight or flight mode, and so then asking for support won't feel quite as threatening as it did when it first started to happen. And so one of the best gifts of approaching your anxiety is that you'll be able to notice these signs of anxiety in everyone else around you. She talks about how these forms of anxiety that you're most familiar with, you'll be able to recognize, and you can be supportive of others. And that means you can give that person a smile or a kind word. You can help give them encouragement. And so your own form of anxiety can boost your personal superpower of empathy. And that's what we really need most in this world is, as we see higher levels of anxiety, it means we need higher levels of empathy for each other. So the takeaway from all of this, if you breathe and you move more and you take note of what your anxiety is signaling, you're going to have a more fulfilled and more creative, you're going to feel more connected, and you're less stressed overall. And so she touched on the parasympathetic aspect of this and how important it is to understand and get back in touch with your parasympathetic nervous system. I think it's important to note here that once you understand this, it becomes much more helpful and makes much more sense of what you're trying to achieve. So what is the parasympathetic nervous system that you're trying to tap into? It's one of the 3 divisions of the autonomic nervous system. And the other 2 are the sympathetic nervous system and the enteric nervous system. And we'll just leave those to the side for now, but the parasympathetic nervous system is what we're going to talk about. So the automatic nervous system is responsible for regulating your body's unconscious action. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about pay attention to your feelings and not your emotions. The parasympathetic system is responsible for the simulation of rest and digest, or feed and breathe, as it's often called. These are the activities that occur when the body is at rest, especially after you've been eating. That includes sexual arousal, salivation, tears, urination, digestion, using the bathroom. Its action is described as being complementary to that of the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for stimulating activities associated with the fight or flight response. So when you talk about fight or flight, there's also I have also referred to it as flight, fight, or freeze. There are those who put up their fists and want to duke it out and have an argument. There are those who just want to run away from it. And then there are those, I happen to be one of them, I have a couple of other neurodivergent friends who go into freeze mode. And I will speak to what the Cleveland Clinic says about the parasympathetic nervous system and make it more simple. Because it's really important that you take care of your parasympathetic nervous system. Pay attention to those feelings that you're having inside your body. Because if your parasympathetic nervous system, said in simple layman's terms, which is what I need, it's a network of nerves. And it relaxes your body after stress or danger, but it also helps run life-sustaining processes like digestion during times when you feel safe and relaxed. So I know a lot of people eat their stress, and so they have like this mixed emotion response to stress where they want to eat more, but your digestion is under control of your parasympathetic nervous system, and then when you're stressed, you're either digesting too fast or you feel hungry when you're not really hungry. And so that's why the informal description for it is rest and digest, or feed and breathe. I personally starve my stress because I don't feel like eating. My digestion gets tripped up and I'm not able to even eat anything. So again, in layman's terms, the parasympathetic nervous system is part of your automatic nervous system. And it's responsible for many of the functions that you think you don't have really control over, but you don't really have to think about it in order for it to be in play. So it controls your heart rate, your blood pressure, digestion, you're going to the bathroom, sweating, along with many other functions. And the parasympathetic part balances the sympathetic system. So while your sympathetic nervous system controls your body's fight or flight response and freeze, your parasympathetic nervous system helps to control your body's response during times of rest. So the real job of it is to relax or reduce your body's activities. Because of the signals that it carries, The rhyming phrases of rest and digest or feed and breathe are easy ways to remember what your parasympathetic nervous system does. So, for your eyes, it constricts your pupils to limit how much light enters your eyes. It also makes changes that can improve your close-up vision and can cause tear production in your eyes. For your nose and mouth, it makes glands in your mouth produce saliva and glands in your nose produce mucus. And that can be helpful with digestion and breathing during times of rest. For your lungs, it tightens airway muscles and reduces the amount of work your lungs do during the time of rest. For your heart, it lowers your heart rate and the pumping force of your heart. For your digestion, it increases your rate of digestion and diverts energy to help you digest food. And it also tells your pancreas to make and release insulin. And that helps your body break down sugar into a form the rest of your body can use. And then it also relaxes the muscles that help you control how you go to the bathroom. And then it also manages some of your body's sexual functions like feeling aroused, and then lubrication and things like that when for sex. So what's the difference between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system? They have opposite but complementary roles. Your sympathetic nervous system carries the signals that put your body system on alert, and your parasympathetic carries signals that return those systems to their standard activity levels. So your sympathetic nervous system takes over when your safety and survival are at risk. That's the sympathetic, but that system's actions can strain the body systems when it's active for too long. Because these two systems offset each other, they help maintain balance in your body. And your parasympathetic nervous system also manages the activity in organs throughout when your body feels calm and safe. And so these functions don't involve risk or danger, but they're still key to helping and keeping you alive and healthy. So where is the parasympathetic system located? Well, it's one of the two parts of your automatic nervous system. Your atomic nervous system is just a subset of your main peripheral outside nervous system, which is all of the nerve tissues in your body outside of your brain and your spinal cord. So not your brain and spinal cord, but all the other nervous system. That is all part of the atomic nervous system. And your parasympathetic nervous system uses 4 of the 12 cranial nerves. And the fourth one, 3 of these 4 involve your senses and glands connected to eyes, nose, and mouth. But the fourth, your vagus nerve, connects to the part of your mouth and extends down through your neck into your chest and abdomen and belly. And your vagus nerve makes up about 75% of the parasympathetic nervous system overall. It's connected to your heart, to your lungs, and to other vital organs. So farther down, there are a lot of other nerves directly connected to your spinal cord, but your parasympathetic nervous system only uses some of them in the lower part of your spine. So why am I explaining all of this? Because when you are doing the deep box breathing and you're moving your body, you're engaging and comforting that vagus nerve and bringing your parasympathetic nervous system back in play. It's important when you get triggered by something going on in your 5 senses, because you're a feeling creature that then thinks. Your limbic brain will react, and you're receiving feedback all of the time from all of your senses and through your sympathetic nervous system, and you're having a reaction. Sometimes it's big, and that's why it's really important to do some of the deep breathing, that you can do some of the body movements that the neuroscientist was talking about, because you want to re-engage that parasympathetic nervous system as quickly as possible. It's likely, whether you learned it as a child or you've learned it through your history as a young adult, that you've created these reactions that your brain is having an immediate response to, and your neural pathways are wired now in a way that causes you to have a big reaction. And so you can start training your body to pay attention when you have these big feelings, that maybe what you want to do instead is recreate a new neural pathway through this deep breathing, through meditation, through self-calming, noticing when things start to feel big, paying attention to all of that, and then retraining your brain to behave in a very different way. So, the original premise of this entire episode for this podcast was, can you calm your anxiety through a couple of processes like deep breathing and body movement? I don't think that clinical anxiety is going to work quite that way. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. So let me just start with that. I am not prepared to go off of my anxiety medication in lieu of doing deep breathing and body movement. Now, when I was running all of those miles, I was not on any anti-anxiety medications. So but it takes such a quantity for me to get that back to where I can be not quite so anxious about it. But I think I was also in a lot of denial about my clinical anxiety. I do think, for me personally, that the deep breathing and the body movements, getting daily exercise and working on some of those things, I do believe that it is a great partner to my medication. And it does help when I have anxiety breakthroughs where originally I might have only panicked. Now I know I have a tool that I can combine with my medication. And so it does calm down, I think, maybe the everyday anxiety just a bit. I don't know that I would do it as a substitute, at least not yet, because I'm really not great at practicing meditation as I would like to be, and I think I have a lot of room for improvement. So as we head into the new year, I hope that you found some of this back up with the neuroscientist and some of the things that I have said before, that it will help you also maybe use it for your own. And that you will, as you walk into the new year, when you have some anxiety opportunities to practice, that you find this helpful, that you find it calming for maybe your everyday anxiety, especially in the moment when that email comes or that phone call comes, or you're running up against a deadline and you're feeling under pressure. That maybe some deep breathing would help, maybe some movement would help. I wish you all a very calm, safe new year. I hope that you get to achieve all of your goals, and I can't wait to talk with you on the next episode. My Patreon is up and running now. I have several tiers to help you reach some of your goals throughout the year. If you're neurodivergent and you're looking for a supportive community where you can be authentically yourself, please find me on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/inside the pickle jar. You can also find me on YouTube if you'd like to see the video versions of this podcast. Big hugs from inside the jar, and I will talk to you on the next episode.